Hello everyone, very good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining today's workshop. Now your participation means a lot to us here at ManageEngine. So on behalf of the entire AD Solutions team, I thank you very much for taking some time for this workshop. So this is going to be workshop number 3 in the ADManager Plus workshop series, and the last 2 weeks we had workshop 1 and 2 where we focused more on user provisioning. That was for the first week, and second week we focused on user modification. And the best part is we saw different ways by which you can manage users in Active Directory and various other objects in Active Directory without using complex scripts like VB or PowerShell scripts, or toggling between multiple Microsoft tools like Exchange or Link, or the ADUC console or ADSI edit or anything of that sort. So we saw powerful user creation techniques in the past weeks, and this week is going to be we'll be focusing on 2 topics. So the first topic is going to be AD delegation, which is Active Directory delegation, and the second topic is going to be workflow. So we will be discussing about workflow also. So before diving into the agenda for today's session, let me introduce myself. My name is Vivin, and I am the pre-sales consultant for the AD Solutions Suite here at ManageEngine. Okay, so with that, let me quickly give you today's agenda. So the topic for today's session, I said that we'll be focusing on 2 topics, which is delegation and workflow. To start, we will be discussing about delegation. So how do you delegate tasks to your colleagues? So you as administrator can delegate certain tasks to other users in your domain very securely through ADManager Plus. So the first thing is enforce attribute level restrictions for error-free account creation or modification as per organizational policies. So that would be the first topic. So you create customized roles with all the restrictions that you want, and then you delegate it very securely to other users in Active Directory. I mean, when I say other users, they can be HR, they can be IT technicians, or even administrators. And the second thing is we are going to see how to create a console for your HR so that they can log into that console, a very simple web page, and then initiate the user provisioning process. So that's going to be the second topic. And the third one is when you're delegating something to your, let's say to other Active Directory users, be it your HR or your IT technician, you wouldn't want to delegate it without any restrictions in place. And we are going to focus on one such restriction, which is you can restrict certain OUs for your technicians. So we'll be talking about OU restrictions. How do you restrict OUs for your technicians while delegating certain tasks to them? And the next half, we will be focusing on workflow. So workflow, I will be talking more about Active Directory workflow here. So what if you want your users to raise request for account provisioning, password reset? So instead of granting them access to Active Directory or ADManager Plus, you add them as requesters within the application. They use the application to raise request, and the request gets forwarded to the next level for approval. And you as administrator can review the request, and if you find that valid, you approve it and the action takes place in Active Directory. So when I say workflow, the whole topic would be meaningless if I skip assigning rules and notification rules, because a request is going to be raised and we'll have to have a way by which the request is assigned, and also the request should be notified. So we are going to talk about notification and assigning rules as well. Okay, so that's the last topic, which is auto-assign tickets to right technicians and track their progress via email. So that's a brief about today's agenda. So without any further delay, let me dive into the application. Okay, so for those of you who have test lab or test installation in your PC, you can very well make use of that as we go through this session. For those of you who do not have a test environment and would like to play with the software as we go through the workshop, you can very well make use of the test installation that we have hosted. So I would request you to just have a look at your chat windows. I'm going to share the link for the installation and the credentials as well. So here we go. So the URL for accessing the test installation is going to be this. Okay, hope all of you have received that. So you can just click on the link and it would prompt you to type in a username and password. So the username is going to be user and the password is going to be password at 123 with P capitalized. Okay, and the logon to, I want you to select workshop. So that's the name of the domain. So once again, let me repeat. The username is going to be user, the password is password at 123 P capitalized, and the logon to is going to be workshop. So let me log in. Okay, so as you all know, as soon as I log into ADManager Plus with an admin account, I will be welcomed by the product dashboard. And last week we were focusing on the AD management tab. So ADMGMT stands for Active Directory Management. Now this week we will be focusing on delegation and workflow. To start with the first half, we will be discussing about delegation, Active Directory delegation. Now, when I say delegation, all it means is you create certain customized actions so that in turn reflect in Active Directory and you grant it to certain users in your Active Directory. So we are going to see efficient ways or effective ways by which you can securely delegate roles to users within your Active Directory environment. So the first step is what we're going to do is we are going to create two roles. So one for the IT technician and the other one for the administrator. And we will be assigning those roles to, let's say, a IT technician and an administrator, and we'll see how the roles look in real time. Okay, so the first step is we need to create a role. So roles are nothing but the actions that you are going to delegate to someone from your Active Directory domain. So the first step is I click on AD delegation and then I go to help desk roles. And in order to create a new role, you have some predefined roles in the application right here. As you can see here, you have some predefined roles. You can pick and choose any one of these roles or create your own customized role. So I just click on create new role. Okay, so the role that we are going to create, the first role is going to be, okay, role for IT tech. So this is going to be the first role. And what do I want this role to be mapped to is I want this role to create user accounts in Active Directory. I want this I want this role to modify user account in Active Directory. So when I say creation, it is a one-step process, but when I say modification, modification branches down to many actions in Active Directory. Reset password, unlock, move, delete are all part of modification. So I need to make sure I refine the actions, or I need to pick and choose the actions that I wish to delegate. So that's our next step here. So I want this role to modify, but what in modification? That's the question here. I want this role to reset password, unlock user accounts, and let's say delete users and do nothing else. So I don't want this user to modify users in bulk. So I'm just going to deny bulk modification. To be on the safer side, I don't want this role to import a CSV file as part of any bulk modification actions. So I'm completely going to deny bulk modification right here. Now, apart from the checkboxes that you see here, the checkboxes are going to be the roles that you will be delegating to the technician, and once enabled, it will be active for the role. Okay, so you have few other activities or actions that you can delegate or map to a role. You have group management, mailbox management, file server management, so on and so forth. And you can also allow this role to generate few reports within ADManager Plus. Okay, so it's just a matter of selecting the checkboxes of the respective reports. Okay, if you want this report to generate the logged out users report, yes, it's just a matter of selecting the respective checkbox. So for now, we're just going to keep the role as simple as possible, and I'm just going to stick with user management. And within user management, I want this role to perform two actions, which is create and modify. Let's save this role. So the first step is done. We have now created a role with all the restrictions that we want. Okay. And now the second step is we need to map this role to a technician. So that's the second step here. So for which I click on help desk technicians, and I need to add a technician. So by saying technician, I'm referring to an AD account. So an AD account can be that of a HR, a technician, or even an administrator. Okay, so in general, all users in Active Directory will be referred as technicians. So I'm going to add a new technician here. So in order to do that, I click on Add New Technician. Now, if I click on Select AD User, I get a pop-up window. Now this pop-up window will give me the list of all users in my Active Directory domain. So I can just search for the user account that I'd like to add within ADManager Plus. Okay, so I'm going to pick and choose a user here, and the name of the user is going to be Admin IT USA. I have it right here. I can even use the search option if that is required. So Admin IT USA is going to be the name of the technician, and I hit OK. And the next step is we'll have to map this technician to the role that we created. And what's the name of the role? So role for IT tech. So this is the exact role that we created. So we are now mapping the role for a technician, and we can even map multiple roles as well. As you can see here, you have any number of roles. I mean, you can create any number of roles and map a technician to several roles if that is your requirement. So role for IT tech, and I simply save. Now we have successfully added the technician, which is Admin IT USA. So let's just log out, sign out, and then sign in as the Admin IT USA account. And I'll show you how the user interface has changed. Okay, I request you to note something else here. This is not going to be a local authentication. This is a domain authentication. So this is a domain credential and the password associated with that account, and workshop is going to be the name of the domain, and I hit login. Once again, this is not going to be a local authentication. This is a domain authentication. You see a world of a difference right here. So as soon as I log into the application, I do not have access to any other options other than the ones that are mapped to my role, which is role for IT tech. So I have the option of creating user accounts in Active Directory one by one, or I can create user accounts in bulk. But when it comes to modification, since I've denied CSV import for user modification, I just have modify single user. So this is how you grant certain actions to your users in Active Directory. And let's say you have a requirement for elevating a user's permission within ADManager Plus. Once again, it's not elevating a user's permission in Active Directory. We are just talking about elevating users' right within ADManager Plus. So that's the core idea here. So I sign out. I sign in with an administrator account here. So admin, I type the password. So in order to elevate a role's permission within ADManager Plus, the process is very simple. All I need to do is just edit the role that was mapped to the technician and then select the checkboxes that is required for the role. For example, we were talking about a role which is role for IT tech. And if I need to elevate the role, I just edit the role and then select the other checkboxes, or select the checkboxes that are required. As simple as that. Okay, so now I was at the start of this session, I told you about some restrictions that you can impose on user accounts. So we'll discuss about restrictions, all kinds of restrictions that you can impose on user accounts, because when you are going to delegate certain tasks or actions for users within ADManager Plus, you need to make sure that you delegate them very securely and as refined as possible. Okay, the first restriction is you can restrict the user provisioning action even to an attribute using the role. So if you want this role to create accounts in Active Directory, but you do not want this role to manipulate certain attributes within Active Directory, how do you restrict that? You have something called user attribute privileges right here. So you click on user attribute privileges. Now you will be getting a pop-up window with all the attributes that are related to a user account in Active Directory. Now, for instance, if you feel that this role should not be manipulating the terminal services attributes of user accounts in Active Directory. You can simply leave it unchecked. And now if you feel that this account should not be creating Exchange accounts as well, you can leave that unchecked. So this is the same for any attribute or any user account attribute that you have within ADManager Plus. So it's just a matter of selecting the checkboxes that you want. The ones that are enabled are allowed for this specific role. The ones that are unchecked are restricted for this role. So this is how you restrict the action of this technician even to an attribute level. Okay. So I have now restricted the action of this technician to an attribute. That is the first restriction that I wanted to share with you. Now the second restriction is while adding a technician. So we have now created a role, and the responsibility of this role is to create accounts in Active Directory. Okay, but I don't want this role or the technician associated with this role to create accounts in certain organizational units in my Active Directory structure. How would I restrict that? That's very simple. So the second restriction is OU based administration. So you go to help desk technician. Now you edit the technician that we're talking about. So we were discussing about admin IT USA. So you simply edit the technician, and you have something called add OUs right here. So by default, this technician, which is admin IT USA, will be able to perform the actions that are delegated in all the OUs within the Active Directory structure. Now, if you don't want that to happen, if you feel that certain OUs shouldn't be handled or manipulated by this specific user account, you simply select Add OUs, and then you just go ahead and restrict. You just select the OUs that that should be visible for this specific user account. For example, Employees USA OU. Okay, now if I select this checkbox or this specific OU and I hit OK, which means while creating user accounts, if I log in with the admin IT USA account and if I try to create user account, the only OU that I would see as a technician is going to be Employees USA OU, and the other OUs will be hidden. That's the best part here. Okay, now how would this be useful? Now I have seen organizations spread across the globe, and in various instances the various locations or geographical sites are represented using an OU. Say for example, you have an OU that is associated with India, you have another OU that is associated with London accounts, and you have the third OU associated with Middle East accounts. Now if that is the case, if you want the administrator of a certain geographical location to manage accounts only belonging to that specific OU, you can just go ahead and impose OU based restrictions for that account. So we are talking about one admin per OU. So we are talking about complete administration, but only for that OU alone. So that's how powerful the application is when it comes to restricting actions of technicians based on OUs. Okay, so the next thing is, let's assume that you have some top level security groups and you don't want this technician to have access to those top level admin groups. Okay, so that the technician will be able to add or remove users from that group. So how do you exclude certain top level security groups from this account? You can simply go ahead and click on add and add certain security groups under the excluded groups section. Okay, so this is how you do it. Okay, another very important case when it comes to delegation is, the whole point of delegation is you will be delegating actions to users in Active Directory, and while doing so, there are chances that the user account might not have certain rights in Active Directory to perform the actions that you have delegated. For instance, if the admin IT USA account has been delegated the role of user creation, but this account does not have rights in Active Directory to create users, the next question is, how will this technician will be able to create user accounts in Active Directory if he does not have sufficient rights? So the answer lies in the checkbox, which is impersonate as admin. Okay, now this checkbox does the trick for you. Now, if a technician does not have rights in Active Directory, and if you still want the technician to perform certain actions, you select the checkbox, which is impersonate as admin. Now, if you select the checkbox, it's like enabling a proxy account for the technician. And the proxy account, by saying proxy account, I am referring to the credential that we have configured in the domain settings. For those of you who attended the first workshop, the first step that you do is whenever you install this application on a server, the first step you do is you add a domain to manage. And while adding a domain that you're planning to manage, you will be providing a username and password here, and in most of the case this is going to be a domain admin username and password. And when I enable impersonation for a technician within ADManager Plus, I am enabling a proxy account, and that proxy account is going to be the account that we have configured in the domain settings. Okay, so this is how you elevate a user's permission using ADManager Plus. So the best part is, if I log into ADManager Plus as the technician and I try to perform certain actions in Active Directory, the action will pass. The reason is the proxy account is being used as the authentication token. Now, wait a minute. An immediate question related to enabling a proxy account is related to auditing, related to security auditing. Okay, the next question is, hey, if I enable proxy for a user account, will my security logs tell me that the technician who actually performed the change is the actual technician, or is it going to be the proxy account? Now, if you have a look at the security logs would tell you that the proxy account has done changes 1, 2, and 3. But in reality, it is not the proxy account, it is the technician account, which is admin IT USA, who has done the changes 1, 2, and 3. But from where do I get the answers? We have it completely covered. Do not worry. We have something called audit reports right here. So if you just click on the audit reports within the AD delegation tab, you will be able to get detailed information related to any audit trail of your user accounts or any actions done by user accounts using ADManager Plus, irrespective of whether or not the proxy is enabled. Okay, so we are talking about complete change auditing of technicians within the application, be it a minor change and the output of the action can be a success or a failure. You'd be able to get the list of all changes. Okay, so if you want to track the list of changes done by the technicians within the application in the last 6 months, so you just go ahead and choose the custom time period from here. Okay, some of you might not be having the time to log into the application and then generating a report. So for those of you, you have something called scheduled reports right here. You simply go ahead and create a schedule and you pick and choose the technicians that you want to track, and this application will be generating the audit information, and it will be emailing those reports to your inbox. Okay, so we have it completely covered when it comes to auditing the actions done by the technicians. So we also have something called admin audit reports. I also want to share some information regarding this. So now that we're talking about adding users, granting them different roles, so we are talking about permissions in Active Directory. We are not talking about native permissions. We are talking about permissions within ADManager Plus. Okay, so if this action, or if assigning a permission and revoking is not governed, or if it's not monitored, then it can be catastrophic. So you have something called admin audit reports that will let you track all the actions done to your technicians within the application. So if I add a role to a technician, if I elevate a role of a specific technician, or if I delete a technician, all that will be audited along with the username and the timestamp of the action. So that's the best part here. So you can audit the changes done by your technicians in AD through ADManager Plus. And the second thing is you can audit the technicians, audit the actions done by other technicians to your technicians within the application. Okay, so we have completely covered the auditing part right here. So delegation was the first part. So delegation, we saw how to create roles and how to map those roles to your technicians. And also we saw how to audit the changes done by your technicians so that you have complete answers, or a control over the things that you're delegating and the actions that your users do in Active Directory. So the second half of our session is going to be related to workflow. Now, when it comes to workflow, all of you know that workflow is a request and approve kind of process. Okay, so when it comes to Active Directory workflow in specific, if you are not comfortable in users performing action in Active Directory and delegating stuff, instead you want them to raise a request, and that request will be reviewed by a top level admin, or let's say an IT technician, and after the reviewer process is complete, you will be notified. So you as a top level admin can have a look at the request, and if you find that the request is valid, you can hit execute and the action will take place in Active Directory. And the basic levels of approval, we have 3 levels of approval here. So we have a reviewer, approver, and executor. You can add any number of users to the requesters, reviewers, approvers, and executors. And if you feel that your organization is going to be a mid-sized organization and these many levels of approvals are not required, you'd like to keep it simple, you can simplify the workflow right here. So you can have a requester and an executor. So for today's workshop, we are going to introduce a reviewer and an executor. So you have a requester who will be raising requests for actions in Active Directory, and we have a reviewer and executor. Okay, so when it comes to requesters, we need to define the conditions for which a requester can raise request for. So for that, we have something called requester roles. So you create a role. So I mean, these roles are completely different from the roles that we saw in AD delegation. So those are help desk roles, and the ones under workflow are going to be requester roles. Okay, so requester role. Let's assume a scenario here. So in normal cases, what happens is in organizations, the HR recruit employees, and they fill in the information about the employees in an Excel sheet, and they send it across to an IT technician for AD object creation. Now we are going to take it one step further. Now instead of an Excel sheet, we are going to replace the Excel sheet with a very simple web form, and that web form will be filled by the HR department, and that form will be sent or raised as a request by the HR department, and it will be forwarded to the IT technician. The IT technician can then review the request, and if the technician finds the request valid, he can just go ahead and create user accounts in Active Directory. So we're going to do just that. So for which we'll have to start with the requester roles. Okay, I'm going to create a new role here, and I'm going to name it as role for HR department. Okay, so this is the role, and I want the HR to raise a request for user creation and nothing else. Okay, so just user creation. Now apart from creation, you have modification, delete, move, unlock, and all other operations. So I'm just going to stick with role for HR department for now. Okay, so now we have successfully created a role. The next step is we will have to map this role to a requester, before which we'll have to add a user or map a user to the requester role. So I click on requesters. So I'm going to add the HR team to the requesters role right here. And how do I do that? So I have something called add new requester. I click on add new requester, and if I click on browse, this browse is going to give me the list of all Active Directory users, okay, belonging to the domain. So I can choose the user account. So the user account that we're going to talk about or we're going to handle is going to be the HR requester or the HR account right here. So I have already added the account right here, as you can see here, HR account. And the next thing is we need to map a role for this specific requester. And the role that we have created for the HR is right here, role for HR department. You pick and choose the requester role. And if you wish to restrict certain OUs for this requester, you can do so. Okay, we have already seen how to do this in AD delegation, so I'm going to skip that part. So now we have successfully added a requester, and we have also given the requester a role here. Okay, so let's just quickly sign out and then sign in as the requester, and we'll see how it looks. But before that, before even signing out, we have a very important process here, which is we'll have to define a layout. We were talking about a web form here. So web form is nothing but the template that we are going to create. So for those of you who attended the first workshop, we covered something called user creation templates in the first section. Now, templates are going to be the layout that you can use for user provisioning and user management or user modification. Okay, so we are going to create a very simple layout for the HR so that they can use the layout and raise requests for user provisioning. Okay, so by default, the layout would look something like this. So if you just go to templates and if you create a new template here, and as you can see here, you will be having many tabs that are not necessary for a HR. For instance, you have the Exchange tab, you have the Terminal Service tab, you have Skype, Custom Attributes, and Office 365, which are not required for the HR. So all the HR needs to have is a basic form using which the HR can type in the first name and last name, and maybe the contact attributes as well, the mobile number, the department, or the title for that specific employee. Okay, so you can simply go ahead and remove the unwanted tabs from the layout and keep it as simple as possible. And how do you remove tabs? You have something called enable drag and drop. You click on enable drag and drop, and if you do not want the Exchange tab to be there on the layout, you delete the entire tab. That's it. Or if you do not want a certain attribute to be in the layout, you delete the attribute. And do not worry if by mistake if you delete certain attributes, the attributes that you delete from the layout will be placed in the field tray in the left hand side. And if you need to bring them back to the layout, all you need to do is just drag and drop it in the layout. Okay, so you can customize the layout here. So I've already created a template for you. I'll just open up the template, and this template is going to be a very simple or a very basic template, and all the HR needs to do is just fill in the first name and the last name of the user account. That's it. Okay, so the template that we are going to discuss is about the template for the HR. So you have it right here. So if you open up the template, the layout is going to be very simple. It just has 3 tabs: general, account, and contact. So the contact has all contact related information of the AD account. And if you go to the account, so you have a password so already keyed in by the administrator. So the HR need not type in the username, or I'm sorry, the password. Okay, so if for security reasons the administrator decides the password and then saves it in the template. And now what we are going to do is we are going to map this to the HR so that they can raise request using this template. And how do you map a template for the HR? So you go to the workflow section, you edit the requester that we added. So you click on requesters and you have a look at the requesters right here. Now we are talking about the HR account. So we edit the account, and we need to make sure that the HR has access only to the template that we delegate. So if you click on add edit templates, so there are multiple checkboxes. All these checkboxes are going to be the templates that are available in the application, but we don't want the HR to use any other template for user creation. We want them to use one specific template that we created. And how do you set that as default for the HR? You have a small symbol right here. Now if this is checked, which means that this template will be set as the default for raising a request. So I just hit OK and save changes. So let me quickly log in as the HR, and let me show you how the screen actually looks like. Okay, I sign out. Okay, HR account. Again, this is going to be a domain authentication and not a local authentication. I key in my password. So if I log into the console now, so I have a separate tab for raising request. So if I click on request, this is where I go to raise request for user creation. And if I need to create accounts, or let's assume that I'm going to raise a request for creating an account that belongs to the IT department, I click on single user creation. I want you to notice something else here. If I click on single user creation, the template that we set as default for the HR is now populated right here, and the HR will not be able to change the template because we have defined the requester role as such. Okay, so assuming that I'm the HR, I can now set the priority for this request: high, medium, low, or normal. So I'm just going with normal, and the subject is user for the IT department. Okay, and let's assume that the first name is going to be Bruce and the last name is McLean. All right, so all the HR needs to do is just key in the first name and the last name, and the template does the rest for you. Okay, as you can see here, the rest of the attributes got auto-populated, and that's the functionality of the template. Okay, so the HR need not type the password because the password is already there. The administrator knows the password because he configured the password in the template. And if I click on the contact tab, I can just go ahead and define the contact attributes. So the user is going to be part of the IT team. So I search for information and technology. There you go. And now I don't have create user. Instead, I have create request. Why is that? Because I have logged in as a requester, and I'm not going to create a user account in Active Directory. I complete a very simple form, a web page, and then I raise request for user creation. So now the request has been successfully sent. And where does this request land? I'll show you in a short while. So I sign out, and I'm going to log in with the admin account. The admin account by default will have the option of reviewing and executing a request. So I log in as the admin account here, and if I go to workflow, I have a section called all requests. So you have some notification and assigning rules. So if the notification rules are defined, and let's assume that whenever a request is created for user creation, and we have defined a notification rule to notify the administrator whenever a request is raised for this specific criteria, which is user creation, you will be receiving an email, and once you get that, you can log into the application and click on all requests in order to view the request that has been raised. Okay, so you have the request right here, which is user for IT department. You have the timestamp of a request creation and by whom was the request raised. And if you'd like to have a look at, the list of user accounts or the user account, you just click on the link, and then you have something called view objects. So you click on view objects, and you have a look at the user account, and you see just 3 attributes or 3 tabs for the user accounts. You have general, you have account, and contact. But wait a minute, you do not have Exchange, you do not have Office 365, you do not have the custom attributes. Now how are you going to review this request without adding all the necessary information, because the user account is not complete? The process is very simple. You as a reviewer have an option to choose templates right here. So you just click on change. Instead of the default template that was used for raising a request, you click on change, and you have something called user creation with basic attributes. Now I want you to notice something else here. If I click on any one of this template, for example mailbox enabled template, and I hit OK, now you just have 3 tabs here, and if I load another template, the layout will be modified and I will be having all the attributes. So you as an administrator or a reviewer need not populate the values manually. You can simply create a template and invoke the template from here. Okay, if you feel that everything is right, you just hit OK, and then you just go ahead and review the request. And if the reviewer is in turn going to be linked to the next level of approval, which is the executor has a look at the request, and then the executor says OK. Now only when the executor says OK to a request, the user account will be created in Active Directory. So that's the best part here. So this is how you create roles for raising requests for any Active Directory action that you can think of. Be it user provisioning or modification or even deletion, you have customized roles. And you can also restrict certain templates for your HRs if you want so. Okay, so that's pretty much about today's session or today's workshop. So we saw two topics today. The first topic being AD delegation. So we created customized roles and then we mapped it to technicians, and we also saw about the various restrictions that you can impose on user accounts or technicians. So something like OU based restriction and template based restriction, and even attribute level restrictions. Okay, and the next thing is Active Directory workflow. You added a technician as a requester and you have multi-levels of approval. You review a request, add more information to the request, and then go ahead and execute it in Active Directory. Okay, so the next workshop, workshop number 4, which is scheduled for next week, same time, same day, we will be talking more about reports. So how do you generate reports from Active Directory? How do you get vital information from Active Directory without using scripts, without using PowerShell or VB scripts? And not only that, the best part is once you have a list that you want, how do you manage users from the list, or how do you manage users on the fly? So that would be the agenda for next week's workshop. So I hope all of you will be present for or joining us for the next workshop session as well. And if you would like to have a look at the videos of this session or of the previous workshop sessions, we have it available online, and we'll be sharing the link with you in a mailer that you will be receiving in a short while. So thank you very much for taking some time out of your busy schedule for joining today's session. You all have a nice evening. Goodbye.